Hello everyone and welcome to Sinful Gaming. I hope you're all doing well, I hope you're all staying safe, and most of all, I hope you're all fighting that war against the Grey. Today we have a video for you talking about armies that are devoted to their gods and what this represents on the tabletop. So in some Warhammer Age of Sigmar armies you have the potential to have these sort of pseudo-magical abilities called prayers. Prayers, unlike magic, cannot be dispelled by your opponent and generally are based off a single dice roll, needing to hit, say, a 3 or 4 plus on a singular dice. And with a lot of armies, they also have some splashback if they happen to roll a 1, though not all armies suffer these consequences. Prayers can be different throughout a whole bunch of different armies, and they can in fact be quite powerful as well, as generally a priest is generally allowed to use their War Scroll prayer, an army-wide prayer they may get, plus any endless prayers or any of those sorts of things they can use as well. Generally, they'll get to use all three for no ill effect. Now, we're going to take a look today at some armies that make use of this unique and powerful ability that priests give us. And so, let's get started with this is 5 armies devoted to the gods. Number 1, we have the Blades of Khorne. Blades of Khorne are an interesting army, like some with priests, where they completely forego the use of wizards within their faction due to narrative reasons and instead have priests that enable them to get off the buffs, debuffs, and ranged damage that a magician would otherwise provide. Khorne have a multitude of different prayers and abilities they can use, and probably one of the most infamous ones they've got is one called Blood Boil, which is something all Slaughter Priests can use to do d6 mortal wounds to particular targets. A really nice basic prayer that they all can use. They've also got some really cool endless prayers as well, with the Skulls, the Giant Wrath Axe, Hammer, and the Blood Sigil of Khorne, all there to do a bunch of different things for your army. What's great is a lot of Khorne's units are all combat units, so this means that their prayers can go off and buff them up nice and quickly and get them rushing into combat to make full use of them. Khorne are definitely a very aggressive army, and your priests are very much aggressive as well, wanting to be pushed up forward. Though you also have a really cool terrain piece that does function with a priest staying back around the terrain piece, which you can position at the start of the game, and they get a bunch of abilities like re-rolling some prayers and a whole host of other things as well. It's a really cool and fun way to play, and there's probably not many priest-heavy armies in the game much more fun to play than Khorne. Number 2, we have the Daughters of Kane, and Daughters of Kane are the opposite of Khorne, where they don't forego the use of magic, but instead have access to both priests and wizards. This is almost unique among the Daughters of Kane, as there's not many other armies that actually do this outside of them, and it makes them really powerful. What you're able to do is you're able to have your spells as secondary requirements, only buffs that you hopefully can get off, and have your prayers as much more efficient buffs and debuffs and other things that go off on your own units. You have a range of different prayers, and a lot of them are very heavy combat focused. Once again, it's all about getting into combat, much like Khorne, but these guys are the Order Khorne, I guess, and getting forward and charging and murdering your opponents in combat. Your priests are pretty decent as well. They have the ability to buff themselves, and they can also go on these awesome little things called Cauldrons of Blood, which put out another host of different buffs and also make your priests that much more fighty in combat. They actually can be some of the most deadly units in the Daughters of Kane army if buffed correctly. Daughters of Kane, though, as mentioned, just give a unique way to play priests, as generally their priests run up behind their troops and are in cohesion with the wizards in the army, allowing both parts to come together better for the sum of their parts. And as of now, they are the only army that has access to both endless spells and endless prayers. So this is a unique thing for Daughters of Kane. Number 3, we have the Stormcaster Eternals, and much like the previously mentioned Daughters of Kane, Stormcaster Eternals have access to both wizards and priests. However, they have probably a big difference between the Daughters of Kane in that both function in very different roles. While you have a mixture of prayers that do buffs, debuffs, and damage in Daughters of Kane for both wizards and priests, the Stormcaster Eternals almost have 2 separate roles for their priests and their wizards. Their wizards generally to be much more offensive, and a lot of the buffs and debuffs that come for Stormcaster Eternals are in fact prayers. Though there are, some occasions where this is not the case, this is vastly the case for Stormcaster Eternals. So it's important to have those prayers in your Stormcaster Eternals army, because they are the way you get the buffs and the debuffs off. You've also got access to unbinds on your priest. There's a particular prayer that allows your priest to unbind, and a bunch of your priests have some cool other little abilities. The Lord Relictor here has a really cool buff of his own that either does some mortal wounds to your enemy or heals your own Stormcaster Eternal units. Very useful in clutch situations. Stormcaster Eternals do have a very limited amount of priests. Currently, the only priest models in Stormcaster Eternals are the Lord Relictor and Lord Veritant, but they do have some really cool utility and uses. And what's cool about Stormcaster Eternals is, yes, while they're only 5 or 6 wound characters, they do have generally a 3-up armor save, making them some very survivable priests. Number 4, we have Fire Slayers, and Fire Slayers are another army, much like the Blades of Khorne we mentioned first, that have priests and only priests. They do not have wizards. However, much like Blades of Khorne, you can ally in wizards if you would like. Fire Slayers do have Stormcaster Eternals as an ally. But Fire Slayers give us access to these really unique set of empowered prayers called the Magmic Invocations. Magmic Invocations can be a bunch of different things, and that firewall you see at the front there is actually really cool, and has some really decent effects. Not only that, but prayers can be put out on a bunch of different priests, and they can buff and debuff and do a whole bunch of things for your army. Fire Slayers are an army that really has a lot of offense and a lot of defense in combat, though not a lot of shooting power. And the prayers that your priests can do for the army can really help you just make your opponent's life that little bit harder and make your life that little bit easier. Not only that, but some of these are really great at blocking off pathways for your opponent to get, like the wall mentioned here. Fire Slayers generally suffer from being quite slow on the tabletop and not being able to control the board as well as some of the other armies, despite being one of the best combat armies in the game. What some of these prayers can do is allow you to fill up the board as well, not only with just the prayers actually doing anything, but just necessarily filling up space on the board, allowing you to control the board more easily. Number 5, and an army you see recurring in these videos a ton, is Cities of Sigmar. Cities of Sigmar is the greatest all-rounder army in Warhammer Age of Sigmar, I think, and they have access to nearly every type of thing you can do in the game. The only thing they generally lack here is they don't have access to any endless prayers or an associated sort of thing, but they do have some priests, though they are limited in how you can play them within Cities of Sigmar. To start off, we were going to talk about the Rune Lord here, pictured as he is our mainstay priest and the easiest one to have access to in Cities of Sigmar. He is generally the only priest actually in the options that we have available to us outside of Stormcast Eternal priests, but he does have some really cool abilities. He works really well giving some buffs and debuffs around to dispossessed units, and also is a massive +2 to Unbind and Dispel, which is fantastic. You can also put priest models inside Cities of Sigmar, so this includes the Stormcast Eternal ones, into a city known as the Ironworld Arsenal and get a free prayer on all of them that they can all do. The other way you can do this inside Cities of Sigmar and get a free prayer is when you're playing in the city of not Sigmar, city of Morathi, called Harkuron. You get access to a prayer as well for any Daughters of Kane priest or a potential character with a certain command trait, meaning you can make one of your units have exploding 6s to hit inside Harkuron. There's a few ways, yes, but very limited in priests that you can play with Cities of Sigmar, but they do have access to them. And lastly, I'd like to give a couple of honourable mentions to a few different armies that have some priest-like abilities but maybe don't get themselves called priests or prayers. So first of all, I've got the Idoneth Deepkin. They have access to this cool little ability called the Ishuran Rituals, which is a bunch of really cool little abilities that may or may not go off, and many people actually forget Idoneth Deepkin have access to. What I think is great about them is they are very much like prayers in that they can't be stopped, though they generally are very much harder to get off, but they definitely still have access to them, and this is something to consider if you're looking for an army with this sort of thing about them. And my other honourable mention, I'd like to give one to the Orruk Warclans. Orruk Warclans have access to War Chances, which get these cool little war beats they can do, which is very much like a prayer, I think, and they do much the same sort of thing. They give out buffs and debuffs and a whole bunch of other things, mostly buffs though for these. And yeah, it's just a cool little addition you can get for an army. Thank you all for watching. We hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And also drop us a comment down in the comment section as well if we missed any factions you think should be in this video, or any videos you'd like to see on this type of stuff next. Would like to see lots and lots of comments down there, and any information on those factions as well that we've mentioned in the video, tips and tricks and all that sorts of stuff, to help any new players watching the video get a little bit more information. If you'd like to come chat more with me and other members of the community, be you new or old, come and join our Discord server. You will find a link to that in the description of the video. And while you're at it on YouTube, go check out my featured channel section, where there's a bunch of other fantastic Warhammer Age of Sigmar content creators putting out a bunch of stuff, from battle reports, painting tutorials, to tactical videos, and more besides. Lastly though, we'd like to give a shout out to everyone who supports the channel via Patreon and YouTube members. Thank you to James, AJC, JC, Christian Weir, Philip Ward, Soren, Kenny Lowell, Outer and Shot First, Chaos Spawn, James Crowder, and Andrew Jarvis. Thank you all so much for supporting everyone, and if you'd like to help support like these fine people do, you can do so by finding the links to those mentioned parties down in the description of the video as well. Stay safe everyone though, stay well, and most of all, keep fighting that war against the grey. Ciao for now.